So we have information regarding the canceled Assassin's Creed game set after the Civil War, which frankly, I wouldn't mind Assassin's Creed game set around that time because honestly, it's a very interesting time in history. In fact, the Old West and the Wild West was one of the coolest moments in history. Just especially for narrative, like for story narratives, it's very very good, very underutilized nowadays. But anyway, let's get into this. Ubisoft canceled an Assassin's Creed game set after the Civil War. It would apparently feature a black assassin who was formerly a slave, who would be um, who would be fighting the emerging uh, KKK. I don't know if I can say that full name on YouTube, so I'm just going to stick with the abbreviation. Uh, Leadership canceled it, concerned with the U.S. political climate and the Yasuke backlash. The Yasuke backlash, which was completely justified because they tried to rewrite Japanese history in real time. It wasn't just like, oh, they were just rewriting in this game. It was in real life. They were actually actively rewriting history to try to fit their narrative that Yasuke in history was an actual black samurai and all that. And yeah, it was just so stupid. It was such a terrible attempt. And I'm glad that historians called them out because that was just insane propaganda. It was just insane propaganda. They were just trying to rewrite history itself because they wanted to make their game feel justified. That's peak narcissism and peak delusion. And there's a little more information here. It says employees were enthusiastic about the game, but were also frustrated by its cancellation, which they perceived as Ubisoft bowing to controversy. I'm gonna be honest. On paper, interesting concept for Assassin's Creed game, and it honestly wouldn't be a terrible. It isn't a terrible concept, but Ubisoft, especially the last few years, has not been making Assassin's Creed games. They've not been doing justice to the Assassin's Creed IP. And honestly, I think the last great Assassin's Creed game was Assassin's Creed 4, which was Black Flag. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks that. I know Assassin's Creed 1 was great, Assassin's Creed 2 was great, Assassin's Creed 3 was lesser received. I personally still enjoyed it. I would have to go back and complete the story, but I still enjoyed it. Assassin's Creed 4, however, was peak. I loved it, dude. I loved every second of it. It was such a great game. In fact, it still is such a great game and still looks amazing today compared to many games today. Visually, it holds up. I think I was perfectly fine. I know a lot of people weren't really fine with it, like the history of of the Assassin's Creed games slowly progressing to become more and more modern. But honestly, I wasn't that big of a freaking. I liked it. I personally enjoyed Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I know it wasn't the most favored of the Assassin's Creed games, but I personally enjoyed it. It wasn't the greatest game by any means. In fact, it copied a lot of Unity, but I quite enjoyed it. I completed it. It was one of the first games I actually sat down and completed. It was that and Hitman Absolution were the first games I actually sat down and fully completed. Hitman Absolution was a game I sat down and I did not have a hard drive on my Xbox, so I sat down and I had the Xbox on until I completed the game, which risky. But yeah, so again, this is a very interesting concept, and it could have been done in a really interesting way. But of course, they'd politicize it. They'd politicize it and push a modern day agenda in this historical game, and because that's what they do. That's what they did with freaking Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it's what they're going to continue to do until they either go bankrupt, which is likely going to be soon, or they change their course, they change their ways, and they're likely not going to do that because they are so set in their ways. They're so driven by their ideologies. But here's the deal: they would also probably abandon the Templar arc, which hasn't really been so heavily explored in the last few games. And yeah, no, it's just like and they would turn this into a, oh, it's white man bad and all that crap, because that's what they do. That's what these social justice warriors do. They always vilify white people and always uh, make everyone else the hero. And they claim, well, and of course they push the agenda that like they'd make America the evil, the absolute evil of the world. They'd ignore the fact that America was also the nation that uh, significantly brought an end to slavery, and that America in its youth began decoupling slavery relatively quickly in its nation's history, and they'll just overlook that because it's inconvenient to their agenda. So they don't want to look at anything. It'd be a very anti-America game. It'd be anti-America. It'll talk about how the founders were racist. It'll talk about how everyone is a bigot. Every white person's a bigot and inherently racist, and it would always do this crap because that's what they do in these movies, these games, these shows, these books, everything. They have one agenda, and it's always the same. They don't shift it. They don't change it. They adapt a story around the agenda. They don't adapt. They don't adapt an agenda around the story. They cannot make good product because they are so focused on making a political product. Now, frankly, you could push an agenda in a story and still have a good story if you prioritize a story, but they aren't prioritizing the story. They are prioritizing the political messaging because it's not a story they're telling, it's propaganda. But like this, like of course they're I guarantee they're implying because of the outcome of the election is what this means. It's the U.S. political climate and all that, and of course that it just this whole thing could be done in an interesting manner. But yeah, there's no way that current Ubisoft could do it. Former Ubisoft could definitely do it and make a compelling and amazing game. But current Ubisoft has no chance in hell to make a game like this. So frankly, I am glad it's canceled. It's slop. It's going to be slop, especially if anyone at current Ubisoft makes it. So like I said, I'm glad it's canceled, and I get people are upset because I'm pretty sure it was probably like 4 or 5 employees who actually I'm going to be completely honest. Just looking at the current staff images, like of the staff of Ubisoft, it's most of them would be upset. So I believe this whole comment right here. I believe it. Employees were enthusiastic about the game. Of course, they were enthusiastic. They wanted to push a political agenda. They don't want to make a good game. They want to push a political agenda, and that happens to be that they're very, 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 very liberal agenda. And it's not just traditional liberal or classical liberal. It's full on progressive, um, further left than freaking Mao Zedong, and Joseph Stalin. But yeah, no, ultimately, bad idea. Uh, Current Ubisoft making this bad idea. Old Ubisoft making it good idea. Frankly, like this could be a very compelling game. It could be, like I said, it could be a very compelling game where like a black person joins the assassins, um, and aids them in fighting the Templars, but his personal goal is to help fight the KKK. But of course, they wouldn't do that. They'd just say white people bad, minorities good. White people invented slavery, even though historically that's not true. His slavery has existed since the dawn of time, but they're not going to accept that truth because they don't want truth. They want their agenda, their worldview on top of everything. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Like and subscribe and share on your preferred social media platform. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.